Oh wow, my makeup looks weird.
And we'll take it all the way through to the end, like, what happened right after
Oh
the
yeah,
change.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, so actually we're gonna start again. Okay, hi everybody. Hi friends. Christy Nix here with Soulful Aligned Entrepreneur. And today I have something fun and exciting that I'm sharing. This is my girlfriend, Sandra Dee. She is a communication specialist and leadership coach, all about being yourself on camera, but also she's really into and connected with animals and her intuition and how she functions. And I know with all of our human design and hand analysis and everything that we like to play with, she is like a prime story came about. She's like living it, and I wanted to share it because it was just too good not to share, right? So because I was kind of I saw it unfold, actually watched it just kind of Peter, just kind of spiral. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. You need to share this. So that's what we're doing today. And so, hi, Sandra. I'm so glad.
Hello.
Yeah, so thank you for joining me. Is there anything else you want to say about your work before we get started?
No, it might help to know that, yes, leadership communication coach. About a year and a half ago, I really launched into equine assisted coaching. So that communication has taken a very natural stance in my coaching. So I have mostly, I work with women leaders mostly, but I do corporate groups too. But whenever I have the women there, we're all working on the ground and they're working on relationship building and leadership skills and communication directly with an equine partner. So it kind of takes the pressure off of me as a coach. It's great. But so I work on a regular basis with animals, as you said. So that connection has been with me since I was a kid. And I do my work almost on a daily basis now. I've even started apprenticing some young kids, some younger people around the horses and how to understand them and things like that. So it's a very big part of my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just fascinated. I mean, because you are just, I don't know, living the dream. Just with your connection with animals. Yeah. Right. So, because I'm really connected with mine too. And I think that shows up in your human design chart, that your natural connection with animals. And so I just think it's interesting to see those signs come up, and then to have that intuition saying, hey, this is something you need to trust. And so this is a very exciting story. I really love how this came about. So give us a little background about what kind of set up this whole situation.
So, and it's good that I mentioned that I work with the horses and such. So we, on our barn here, we have 4 horses of our own. A lot of times I'll need 1 or 2 more for my event. So it worked out kind of conveniently that I had someone that was coming and bringing her horses in and out. She has a lot of horses. She lives in a rental home not far from where I am. It was very convenient for her to be able to bring the horses that maybe need a little care, medical help. Maybe they'd had an injury, a lot of injuries, a lot of things that she didn't know how happened. But these animals would need some extra attention. So they'd be here and I'd get to use them for my program. So, so actually it worked out great. So this was a situation, I guess you could say that she was a boarder in a way, meaning that she boarded her horse here in exchange for being able to visit and care for them and things like that. So it, in the cognitive sense,
Mm-hmm.
it was an arrangement that
Mm-hmm.
made sense. But there was definitely an undercurrent of oddness that started to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these, I found it very odd that some of these horses would come and be in such dire straits that there were a
Yeah.
few that my husband and I thought weren't gonna make
Make
it
it.
off our property.
That's
Yeah.
frightening. That's frightening.
And they all came back around, and they'd go off to another one of the locations where she had her horses, and another one would come in. Well, this last one that came in, she had two horses. She had one that actually had gotten quite healthy from a serious eye injury, and
Mm-hmm.
she was still here, and the woman was riding her. So she was healthy. The other horse, though, she called up and she said, yeah, I'm going to bring him by. He has a laceration
Mm-hmm.
on his side that needs some care. Would it be all right?
Mm-hmm.
And I, of course, to help an animal, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I come home late that night. I'd been at a networking event, and I had seen this particular horse 2.5 years earlier
Mm-hmm.
at when I went to go look at her herd to start working with the horses in the way that I do. And she said, sure, you can take a couple of mine. So I went to go meet them all. I remembered him being very imposing. He
Mm-hmm.
was strapping. He actually was a former police horse in Houston. So
Wow.
big dude,
Big horse. Yeah.
like soldier of a horse, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I walked into my barn that evening after she had brought him over, I actually started crying.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't believe this was this. I'll start crying now. I couldn't believe it was the same animal.
Oh, wow.
Every rib, the hip bone stuck out. His
Oh my
face.
God.
Alan actually nicknamed him horribly. My husband, Skeletor. I go, don't do that. That's not nice. But
It's not nice.
Not nice.
You're gonna hurt his
But
feelings. Please don't do that.
Such a guy. He's such a guy. He's at Skeletor. I'm like, stop. His name is. Okay. So anyway, this poor dude was standing on 3 legs. His back had
Wow.
been broken. Yeah, it was really.
So this is neglect.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
There's no way that it's anything but. And at this point, the unsettling that I had, especially when this person came and stood next to me the next day in
Mm-hmm.
front of his stall,
Yeah.
and something shifted right then.
Mm.
And it became really clear that something was amiss. And Christy, you said to me, because I said it was so odd because right after that, I didn't actually say anything. All I said was in a tone. I said, I was very shocked to see the weight loss.
Yeah.
And it was a tone that I didn't often use with her. I'd always thought, well, she's kind of quiet. She doesn't stand up for herself.
Yeah.
And, so I don't use the harsh tone with her very often, but my tone was pretty sharp.
Mm-hmm.
It was just very matter of fact, and I wasn't smiling when I said it.
Yeah.
From then on, I had told you, Christy, that she started to go really overboard, like bringing me pots of soup,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
cleaning the barn when she didn't need to and
Yeah.
things like that. And, offering to go get me plants. And
over giving. It's like she's
Yeah.
trying to compensate.
and you said she
Mhm.
needs you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that unsettling kept getting worse and worse. And then one day, this is where we move into the weird stuff, right?
Right. But then there was this shift of awareness, and all of a sudden it was like, ooh, so there is a big problem here.
Yeah, there was that definite discomfort. And the more that she tried to bring nice things, and I found myself saying, oh my gosh, thank you so much. The soup is so good.
Mm-hmm.
There was an equal side of me going,
Red
now
flag.
I know, red alert, red alert, red alert.
Right.
And yet her behavior was appropriate for me to be kind back.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still, I'm looking at this horse that has been starved for 7 months. And I'm like, so there's, you're trying to do the right thing. And especially women, we have this way of not listening sometimes because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At the same time, God has to sometimes, he gives me signals, but a lot of times I have to be hit with a 2x4. It's not a tap on the shoulder. It's like a wham, So, okay. So one day I'm working in the office as as these feelings are increasing, we're coming right up to Passover and Easter weekend, the spring solstice, as some of you would look at it, right?
Right.
And I'm sitting in my office and I hear this thunk, and I know what it is. When we first moved here, we have a picture window that the birds would fly into all the time.
Mhm.
We've put up all kinds of distractions and things and decals on it. Very infrequently does a bird ever hit it now, but this is pretty serious. So I came out and there she was. It was a dove, beautiful dove, and I picked
Ooh.
her up and I thought she was going to make it, but she died in my hands.
Mhm.
All right, kind of wrote that off.
Mhm.
Then later on that evening, I'm walking up to our patio and I hear this unusual call of I'm like, is that a bird? Is that a insect? What is that? And I see this bird kind of flailing around close to the ground on my porch.
Right.
And as I walk up, he hits into that same picture window,
Oh my
not
gosh.
hard.
Yeah.
And then falls down, looks up at me, flies up, and I realize that there's two.
Oh wow.
And he flies up and past me, and the other one flies, and all of a sudden I realize there's three.
Mhm.
And I look over and one of them has landed on my chest,
Oh wow.
sitting there looking at me right here.
Oh my gosh.
And
Hello.
I was like,
Hello.
okay, for a good 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And I reached, another went to fly into my door and I reached over and got them in my hands twice.
Wow.
So
Wow.
in my hands, they're landing on me.
Yeah.
And this is crazy, right? I walk out to the barn.
Mhm.
And my dog now, my German Shepherd's with me, and
Mhm.
she thinks they're fascinating because they're not getting off the ground.
Yeah.
So she's finding them really cool, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm telling her to not hurt them, whatever. But she's fascinated because I know where they are because she's finding them. As I'm
Mhm.
walking to the barn, she's finding more in the grass. We go
Oh, wow.
into the barn, she finds one in the barn. So we must have had at least a dozen of
What
these
were they?
birds.
What kind?
Didn't know what they were.
Oh wow.
So of all things, this
Mhm.
is one of those things. This is why the story is like the chance occurrences that aren't really.
Yeah.
I end up, well, this is crazy. I have to tell somebody, and my husband isn't here.
Yeah.
So I call my girlfriend,
Mhm.
who probably is in her second vodka at that point of the evening. But I thought, well, that's fine. Because this is the girl that I can call that, you know, on her second vodka would find it even more amusing and funny and weird that this stuff is happening.
Right.
So I call her and I go, you're not going to believe what's happening. I tell her about the birds. She goes, what do they look like? I'm like, I don't know what they are. And I describe them. And of all people, now keep in mind, I used to host a biologist radio show. I have my brother's a biologist. I didn't call any of those people. I called my girlfriend who likes to drink vodka, the city girl. I don't call the girl that I think is going to go, oh, that's a whippoorwill. Yeah. I'm like, it's a whippoorwill? She goes, yes. And starts to just lay out everything that she knows about whippoorwills, which turned out to all be correct.
Oh wow.
That they're low-flying birds. That like she's telling me all about them.
Yeah.
So they're whippoorwills.
Mm-hmm.
How would that girl would know?
Yeah. Right.
So,
right. Well, you called the right expert.
Right, the right expert, the vodka expert actually knew about the birds.
Yeah.
Strange. So again, wow, what a crazy thing.
Yeah. No
About
coincidence.
an hour later, it's a full moon.
Mm-hmm.
The field is very lit up, and I go out to just check on the horses, as I will do a lot of times, and say good night to them out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And as I walk out, I hear one of the big owls. Now I can't tell what it is, but it's that really strong, you know, whoo, whoo, right, really deep.
Ooh,
like, oh,
yeah.
That's cool, right?
Mm-hmm. It's very
and then
cool.
I hear another sound from the other side of my field, where there is a little girl who tends to sneak out at night, sometimes get in trouble, right? And it sounds almost like distress, like a scream. And I'm like, what is that? So, and my other dog starts barking at the fence, and then he quiets down, but I still hear this sound. And so I grab my German Shepherd in case it's an injured animal, which I'm thinking it could be. And I get all the way over to that side of the fence, and it's not a child. It's not an injured animal, but at the top of a pole that is lit up by the moonlight, I can see another very large bird.
Wow.
Not the one that was making noise in my property, but just over the fence in my neighbor's property.
Wow.
And it had to have been an owl. I don't know anything else that would have been that big, just a different type of owl making this kind of guttural, ugly cry. It was not a screech owl. Screech owls are tiny.
Yeah.
So I still don't know what that was. I assume it was some sort of a night bird, owl, very large. And I'm like, this is a weird evening.
Yeah. A lot has happened.
It's a lot happening. A lot of bird visitations.
A lot of birds.
A lot of birds all over me.
I know, just literally.
Everywhere. So I go back in the house. I'm thinking, this is wacky. And I had also forgotten until I talked to you, Christy, when I was telling you all of this, that earlier that day, or it might have actually been the very next day. It was the very next day. I got up. I'm still processing all the weirdness that happened. And I'm standing in my window of my kitchen, and I look out, and a red-shouldered hawk. Now, my Native American totem animal is a red-tailed hawk.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Red-tailed hawks aren't everywhere, but we do have red shoulders here. And so that's probably the closest that we could find here to a red-tailed hawk.
Mm-hmm.
Lands on the white fence, looks directly in my window. And before I can get my phone to take a picture of this gorgeous thing, it flies away.
Oh, wow. Hello. Just hello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I'm like,
how many signs do you need?
And so as I reach out, I call you, you give me some great insight. Birds are messengers. There is something that is being communicated to you through the animal world, because that's what I am.
You do.
That's how I do things.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't ignore it. And at the same time, the unsettling now, looking at the horse, I'm actually starting to feel like I started to, without realizing it, making a subconscious decision to say to the woman, oh, don't worry, I got cleaning tonight. I'll feed tonight. I started to realize that I actually was keeping her away by just saying, I got this. You don't need to come tonight. And I was feeling good that she wasn't here. So as I'm talking to you, you start to say, well, that woman needs you. This is a sign. And I start looking up the different animals. And as I'm doing all of this, my pastor calls. And I said, I have something really crazy to tell you. And I start to tell him the story, and I'm thinking, okay, this is going to seem like he's going to think I'm nutsy cuckoo, right?
Yeah, right.
And instead, when I say that there were whippoorwills, he goes, how many?
Because they're omens.
I said, he goes, 3. And I got, no, about a dozen.
Yeah.
And his response was, oh. So
okay.
Oh. Yeah. And he says, birds are messengers. And he says, and it isn't crazy, because even in the Bible, and keep in mind, this is our friend Dan, who happens to now be our pastor of a Christian church.
Right.
And he goes, please, animals talk. God uses animals to talk to us. He goes, look at the donkey and the pastor. He said, we had to use an ass in order to get through the my people. This is my pastor, so I love him. But he goes, there you go, a talking donkey. He goes, yes, it's not like Mr. Ed talking horse, but
not quite the same thing. Yeah,
not quite. But yes, that does happen. And so I gave him some more of the story, and he actually said very strongly, remove this person. You had said, remove this person. As I'm talking to him, she calls in. I don't pick him.
Yeah.
I finished talking to him. The very next person to call is another very grounded Christian woman. Actually, Dan and her, when my husband had a stroke, surprising all of us, they showed up. They were actually praying over him within 20 minutes.
Wow.
She's very rich in her faith.
Yeah.
She calls before I can call the other woman back. And she said, I was just thinking about you. So I shared the story, and she said, this is Passover.
Yeah.
This is a very spiritually rich time. She said, you cannot let this woman back on your property ever. She has a horse here. She has stuff here.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then I think I talked to you next.
Yeah.
And all of this kept falling into place until finally I was fired up, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I need to protect and what my friends, the woman's words were, you need to protect your home.
Yeah. And I think that's what you were doing when you were avoiding her and having her not show up and not come and not, it was almost like you were already starting to draw that line and create
without
the bubble.
Knowing, without consciously doing it.
Right.
But it felt like the right thing to do. And I was relieved. Right. And keep in mind, my husband isn't here. So me cleaning makes it harder on me, because I'm doing everything.
It's more work. Yeah.
Yeah. But I actually felt better with that. So it was interesting that that very day, I got her on the phone, and I'm like, this is going to be really awkward, and change is never easy. But in this case, I literally had to say, and I'm sure that she is probably walking around thinking, crazy Christian girl. It has nothing to do with my church I go to. It has nothing to do with that. I do believe in God. I don't know if she does. So she may think crazy God believing whatever, right?
Yeah. Right.
Because I called her up and I said, there is an energy that is not good here. And I had actually set it up. She did drop some things by. She did come by the night before I had made this, and I had told her some strange things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I was waiting because you said to me, Christy, wait and check in. You'll know when to have the conversation.
Right.
So I actually kind of seeded the conversation, and I got, don't say anything yet.
Yeah. Not time.
And it was the following morning that my friend called, my pastor called, and the clarity really got me fired up to go, absolutely, she can't be here anymore.
Yeah.
So that I did it over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, there's some stuff going on here. I feel that there is an energy that I need to protect my home from,
Mm-hmm.
and it is attached to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And of course she's thinking,
just dumbfounded, I'm sure.
Yeah, what?
Yeah.
And I made a point to say, I have no ill will towards you. I'm doing this, with love to see you go, but you can't come on my property ever again.
Yeah.
I will take your things and your horse to the gate. When can you come by? She said, within an hour. She happened to be moving other horses that apparently had been losing weight. Thank goodness I don't want to see what they look like.
No.
So she had her trailer here in the neighborhood. It's not always here. She said, I can be there. And she gives me a time. I said, that's within an hour.
Yeah.
So she came, and when I went to go, I put her things out in outside the front gate. When I saw them pull up, I went and I gathered her horse, and her horse was just doing circles around me.
Wow.
Very high strung, did not want to go.
Yeah.
I kept myself as calm as possible, but she literally kept circling around me and frantic. And I'm thinking, this is odd. I mean, she's a high spirited horse, but this isn't
out of character. Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. So, led the horse out, and about an hour. Oh, we forgot one thing, Christy. You were the one that said to me when I said, it's so weird. We have a lot of flies, but I've never seen my horses do this. They're just staying in the barn. I couldn't get them in the barn.
Yeah. Nobody's coming out of the barn. Everybody's scared to be out in the open.
And I'm like, this is just the craziest thing. I don't know. And I would go and I would whisk them away. I mean, they have acres that they have free reign, go anywhere they want.
Yeah.
And they were literally, some of them crowding together in one stall, staying in the barn without even going out to eat. Because we put the hay out there, water's back at the barn to kind of make sure that they move like they would in the wild, and they're not eating.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this is crazy. I would even try to lock them out of the barn, and they would
shoot them out of the barn. You were chasing them out of the barn.
I would have like the paddocks of the barn blocked off, the stalls blocked off, and they would come and find the opening to the barn aisle and hang
one opening. Yeah. Well, and like she also came up and didn't she pet your dog?
Oh yes.
That was the night before.
Well, that was the most intense thing. I mean, so if you're listening to the story, remember the horses are staying in the barn, the whippoorwills and all of that stuff. The day that these feelings were starting to get pretty strong, she called me up and I said, hey, don't worry, I got feeding tonight. That was one of those, I got it.
Yeah.
And she says to me in a text, she said, oh, that's actually great because my old dog is dying. Never gave it a name. Yeah. Until the following morning when I asked for it.
Interesting.
My old dog. If you have a dog that you've had for years, wouldn't you call it by its name?
Usually.
I don't know. Yeah. She said, my old dog is dying. Well, it turns out her dog died, apparently suffering. She even said she was suffering. And, my husband and I don't do that.
Yeah.
But okay. So finally she said, yeah, I was up all night with her and she, she finally passed away, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. So she shows up here, and this is the day before I call it quits and say,
yeah, this is like the next day after. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I think the last time that she actually was here.
She was there. Yeah.
And she got out of her car, and I later confirmed with her what happened because my dog ran to greet her, and she ran around, and it's a truck. I couldn't really see the exchange, but I heard my dog yelp.
Yeah.
And then she came around and we were talking a little bit about plants or something, and we're in the gravel driveway, and she looks down at my dog and goes, that's weird. And I glanced down, and my German Shepherd is now on her side on the gravel driveway.
Oh my gosh. Basically
just collapsed. And I'm calling her name and she's not responding.
Oh.
And then she sits up, but she doesn't sit up completely. Her head is hunched over like she's in serious pain. And I'm feeling all over, and I can't figure out what it was. Long story short, we ended up taking her to the vet. The vet said, yeah, she might have tweaked her neck. okay. But that night, it got
Mhm.
so bad, I actually thought I might lose her.
Wow.
Her heart rate was so high, her breath was so, and a 24-hour vet really wouldn't have done anything other than what we did, which was I would sit with her.
Right.
So I was up, and finally she went into rest, and her breathing was so slow that scared me too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a very scary evening, and I realized that was the first time that woman had been here since her dog died.
Mhm.
She touched my dog,
Mhm.
and she
Went
collapsed.
into, yeah. Because animals are such filters. We forget how much of a filter they are for emotions and energy.
You told me that,
Yeah, it's amazing.
which is interesting in so many ways in
Hmm.
the story.
Yeah.
So whether this woman is aware that the energy is with her or not,
Hmm.
definitely is. And I
Hmm.
think some of the illnesses that are coming with her horses are all connected to the same thing.
Hmm.
But when she touched my dog, and as I was rushing her to the vet, I called the woman and I'm like, what exactly happened?
Yeah.
When the door opened, I couldn't see. She goes, well, I just reached down to pet her like I always did. And she cried like she was in pain. So literally she touched her and my dog collapsed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our dogs are like our kids. So that was a big
Yeah.
whoa, right? And me hanging thinking, this is crazy. Is this dog gonna die? I mean,
Yeah.
the next day she was a little better. We have a friend who's a chiropractor who came over, and they actually we have a Bible study that we do together.
Hmm.
So also very strong in their faith, very, if you want to say, light energy, right?
Hmm.
And he came over here, and I didn't want him to leave. And he
Yeah.
didn't want to, because I could just stay here all day, and instantly she started being better. Within
Hmm.
24 hours, she was much better, especially once we took all the stuff for the woman had, and I took her horse. About an hour and a half after she was gone,
Wow.
all of my horses were out in the barn. I mean, out of the barn in the field eating hay.
Oh, you were telling me that. You called me and told me
I
that.
think I sent you a picture, didn't I?
Yeah. Yeah. You're like,
They're all out.
they're all out. Like she's been out like an hour and they're all out.
They're all out. And they
Yeah.
stayed out. They're out right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our flies that were, I thought maybe the cause of them not going on. It's not going to say we don't have flies. It's been it's a perfect setup here in Texas for flies.
It's nature. It's nature.
It's the way it is.
Yeah.
But they're not nearly as bad as they were. And
Interesting.
so they're out there. We had 2 baby chicks that I had written off this silly hen because it had been like 23 days and she's sitting on these eggs. I'm like, girl,
This is
21
not happening.
days.
It's not happening.
21 days. Let's get you going. So I go to pick her up and there's babies.
Oh, she was hiding them.
Yes. But it was the day after it was after this woman was gone.
The clearing.
Now we have
Wow.
babies.
Wow.
Yeah. We have babies. And the horse that she brought, I'm sure people are wondering what happened with him.
Yeah.
His previous owner found out about the situation. We'll just simplify it by saying that.
Mhm.
She has taken ownership of him again. She was heartbroken to find out what happened. She thought it was just a laceration. And then when I sent her videos and pictures, she was very upset.
Yeah.
And so he is now officially boarded. She is boarding him with me. And I'm taking care of me and the vets, me and the vets. Oh, what kind of language is that? Communication specialist. That's what I do. But the vet team here, and not mine, but the ones that we use are helping, and we're getting him healthy. And he has gained weight. His ribs sometimes don't even show right now.
Wow, that's nice.
Good.
Yes.
His face looks much more normal. He has gone from being depressed and reactive because he suffered trauma. And just like we suffer trauma, they have similar reactions. They can be shut down, and then they can react very almost violently when they don't need to. And I know I was a victim of trauma. And when somebody would be even nice to me, I realized, like in my early 20s, somebody would say something nice to me, but they were a stranger. I would lash out sometimes with really bad language to protect myself.
Yeah. Or what do you want kind of mentality.
Yeah. Pretty much. What? Like awful. It was like my, cat, right?
Yes.
And then I later realized as I started working with the horses and learning about equine assisted therapy, which is what I use something from the therapy world to base my equine assisted coaching on. I don't do therapy, I do equine assisted coaching. But I learned about that. And as I started to learn about trauma and the brain and how we react, I recognized it in myself, and thank goodness I had already started to work through that. But I went, oh my gosh, that's me. And I saw it in this horse. You know, we can see it in animals as well. So he is, he's much, much better now. In fact, my husband has even said he's looked out, and he's very similar in color to a couple of the other horses we have here. And he said, I actually thought it was one of the the which is
Oh, wow.
huge.
That's a huge difference.
It's huge.
Huge.
Because as he was so thin and his hind legs go a different direction now because his back has been broken.
Yeah.
When he was so thin, it was so obvious.
Yeah.
But now, yeah. And he's actually getting along well with the other horses. He was getting even violent with them. And everything is quite peaceful, knock on wood, at this point. But I know now that if those signs come, that it's not something to ignore, you know?
Yeah. And your instincts know when something's up.
Yeah.
Your intuition knows.
I remember the moment that I felt that shift, you know, standing in the barn next to her and this animal that was kind of the final straw, you know? And now after she's gone, my husband and I have sat and looked back logically at some of the injuries that these animals have come in with. And yeah, there's a theme there.
There's a pattern. Yeah, there's always a pattern, but you really can't see it unless you look, you know? Unless you know to look. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because you're a generator, right? 5-1 profile. Yeah. So, but sacrally defined. So, that click is often what happens with the sacral. That's that heads up, that awareness, that clarity is the click.
Yes.
So I think it's interesting that you would mention that. So,
okay.
Yeah. So that is the click. That is the sacral going, something here does not belong.
But what I love too is the timing of, it's like, I will look at it as like God knew that I was still needing more proof, you know, like I don't know if this is and so he sent people, literally the phone would be ringing. Well, here's somebody.
Yeah.
You know, and me getting my Christian pastor thinking he's going to think I'm out of my gourd.
Nuts.
Like he's going to think I'm nutty cuckoo. He may ban me from coming into the church. I don't know.
You might tell him, no, don't let her in. Don't let her in.
Like she's like, yeah. But no, when the first thing he said is, it's not unusual.
Yeah.
So it was like everything that I needed in order to make that move and protect my home and my property and my animals and heal my dog and heal what was going on here. It was a scary thing though, because
it was intense. This happened over 2 or 3 days. I mean, this is a short amount of time for it to happen. To go from birds to
and they are some of the even owls are considered to be ominous. And so I took that with as lightly as I could, but between the whippoorwills landing on me and all of this, and
because whippoorwills are death. Whippoorwills are usually big change. In spring is that shift from winter to spring, is that rebirth and being reborn. So, I mean, that's a big shift, you know, that spring equinox. So, I mean, this was a lot of shifting.
Do you think that death could represent
rebirth,
death of a friendship or death of a relationship, or literally it could be that too?
So it could be death of so a lot of the times like I know especially with tarot cards and stuff like that, the death card comes up and people freak out, and it's like, well, no, death means change. It just means shifting. So if you think of it in that space, it was time for you to cleanse and let go in order to, you know, heal and move on. So it was a letting go process. This was a change process, a shift process. Yeah. And so it just so happened to happen in a very small amount of time, very tight timeline, which I think is amazing. And I feel like it gets faster and faster and faster the more times we kind of ignore it and put it off, like kind of, something's going on, but it's not that bad, you know, and you keep pushing it off. And then all of a sudden it's like, I cannot avoid this anymore. This is a rush. Yeah. This is so obvious. I can't not do something.
I could feel it. It was palpable. Yeah. Physical. And the other interesting thing is, part of the reason that you maybe don't make that change or step into what is reading is that you qualify, or you validate your you validate your inertia by saying, yeah, but I need it to be this way because.
Right.
And she was, you know, somebody that I could call up and go, hey, I want to take my horse around the block. And she'd go, okay. So I would have somebody to ride around the block with.
Mm-hmm.
She was a horse person, and I didn't have any other horse people here. In fact, I used to say to people, I'm really surprised that I don't have more friends that have horses around me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have also said that I wanted to reach the younger people and work with younger people, but I
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't sure how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And a few days after she was gone, I realized that I have two apprentices that have been working with me, and they're coming and riding my horses. And so we're all riding together.
Yeah.
My neighbor said, can I pay you to work with my daughter? She wants to learn about horses. My other friend says, my son wants to learn about horses. Is it okay if he comes over? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we're talking 9 to 23.
Yeah. Which is exactly what you wanted.
And not only that, but I reached out to a woman that has a horse around the corner. She goes, oh, I remember talking to your husband about riding. Yes, that'd be great. We're going out today. So
There you go.
I replaced my one person I used to ride with what, 6?
Yeah. Yeah. Within like a short period of time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's another thing is that realizing that you've got to let go of what doesn't serve you. I mean, because a lot of times fear keeps us holding on to things that really aren't our best interest.
True.
Spirit saying, no, 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 over here, over here. But we single focus,
Yeah.
and I don't understand why these other things aren't coming in. And it's like, well, because you have one really big thing that shouldn't be here. So you
Yeah.
got to let it go in order to let the other stuff that's really in your highest good come in.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard shift to make, a change to make, because we don't want to let go of things that are serving us to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Right?
And we're comfortable with them, you
Right.
know?
Right.
I'm reading a book right now, and the author used an interesting term. He called them parking brakes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're not going to move until you figure
Let
out
go.
what the parking brake is,
Yeah.
why are you holding on to it?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was, yeah, and I could validate, yeah, but she helps me clean. Yeah.
Yeah. You justify it. You justify the
Yeah.
pain almost,
And now looking back, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, and, I guess part of me had to also deal with, was I enabling her to continue this pattern? And I was,
Mm-hmm.
of this abuse, honestly, and
Mm-hmm.
neglect.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that just gets me, going. And so to be kind to someone that obviously now I'm looking back going, there's no way that you can say, I don't know how these injuries happened.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't see a horse starving for 6 and 7 months.
You don't think
That's
there's
just,
something up. Yeah.
really? Wow.
Yeah.
You don't know how that
That
happened.
happened.
Okay.
You're not there. Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
finally got to the point where it was just so obvious that I had to say, okay, maybe I am enabling. I rationalized it by saying, if I can help the animal, then I will help the animal.
Mm-hmm.
And we did. And so with every animal that got healthy and left, one of them at least died 2 months after they left here.
Wow.
But he made it out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Back in her care,
Perished. Yeah. And there's so many signs. And so it's hard to find though and figure out which thread to follow.
Yeah.
Because
like, even when I'm retelling it, I was like, oh, and then there's that. And then there was that. And then there was that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's amazing.
But you were very helpful in helping me put the threads together.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I randomly said, my horses won't leave the barn. And you were like,
there's a reason.
Yeah. Because they're scared. It's like, they're terrified.
Yeah. It helps to have someone who can sit back and look at the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always a pattern. And it's amazing to sit back and go, oh yeah. Now that you mentioned it, there's this and this and this and this and this. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can go back months and see those things now.
Yeah.
But you can't see the bottle if you're inside of it.
Mm-mm. Forest in the trees, man.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons that it does help to, and sometimes that help is going to come from a crazy place, like your vodka drinking friend.
You know what? You got to start somewhere, right? Path of least resistance, right? Because if she gets it, everything else will show up. It'll be okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody needs that friend. Everybody needs that friend.
Yeah.
Really needs that friend. So, but yeah, and that's when we've talked about working with the horses, because I know with and horses are so intuitive and they're so reflective and so emotionally in tune. It's amazing the work you can do personally with the horses.
Yeah.
Because they are just amazing creatures.
Yeah.
But they can also help you kind of really connect with that intuitive self that you might be ignoring. Because I find that so many times things are off. We don't trust ourselves, right? We question everything that comes in like, ooh, well, maybe I'm making this up. Maybe this really isn't true. I'm just justifying it for whatever reason or whatever.
Oh,
Right?
yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's amazing how that change can happen, but the horses are amazing at helping you get through your own crap so you can see, oh, this is what I don't need with me.
Yeah.
Because they're going to reflect back that true self, that emotional self. And so, yeah.
They definitely will be brutally honest with how you're showing up. Just do that.
Oh,
and they
yeah.
will read things in you that you can say, I'm fine, or you can say, I'm confident. And they'll be like, yeah, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Not feeling that one. Yeah. Not feeling that one.
No.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think we do need to go into the intuitive workshop with the horses.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be amazing. There is, people do, there is sort of a magical thing, a romantic picture that a lot of people have of horses, which I think helps me, to get people interested. But the reality is there is a lot of science. There's neuroscience, and there's even electromagnetic fields that have been studied for everything, but particularly with the effects that has from the horses onto us, and how their heart rate and the way their body functions is actually compassionate, meaning that it can affect ours. So being around them can literally lower our heart rate and our blood pressure. So when they started to discover this study after study, it kind of makes sense why some of the horse girls will say, I feel better when I'm with my horse, because literally there is an environment that is allowing you to feel better. There's actually scientific proof of why that happens. And they are giant prey animals. So they've survived for 500 million years. So they've been able to read their environment
and
within
adapt.
a second of a change to be able to stay alive. So
yeah. And I know with human design, like having your G center or your heart is a monopole, which means energetically you have magnetic fields right outside of you, your aura, your energy. You can push things out or pull things in, and that's how we attract. We don't repel, we attract. We attract everything, good and bad, we attract. And so by connecting with and knowing how that G center works for you, whether it's defined or not defined, will change your magnetic pole. It will change how you bring in things and energetically how you show up. So it's almost like a science experiment for me, because I'm 3/5 profile, wouldn't that be interesting to see how the horses react to you knowing you're out of alignment, and then shifting and integrating and starting connecting with that heart energy and shifting that monopole electromagnetic field, and then see how you are with the horses and how they reflect. Exactly. So that would be quite an interesting little experiment.
And they respond instantly, and they are very forgiving. So unlike us. So if I'm doing a workshop with women and the woman tries an approach to build a relationship with her equine partner and it doesn't go well, like maybe she does something that actually freaks him out and he runs off. Because most of the women that I work with don't know horses. They have no idea, which is actually sometimes a bonus. We work with it. And so maybe they've done something and the horse takes off. And so that was a bad experience. Well, if they shift that energy, so maybe they need to calm the energy down in order to work with the equine partner that has been chosen for them, as they choose with intuition. So and sometimes I'll be surprised at who will pick what horse, thinking that I know what that horse is going to do. And I don't. Because when they get with that individual, different things can happen. And so if they shift maybe into a more calm energy and they tap into that place where they are okay with themselves and they become more vulnerable, that horse will then turn around, forget that they had done anything that was offensive.
And run right up to them.
And we don't. We as humans go, yeah, I see what you're doing. You seem okay now, but I remember. Right? And we hold on to that story, and horses don't live in story. They live in right now. So
present moment.
And that's the beauty of being able to work with that sort of nature-based ideal, that there is no story.
Right. And it's interesting because there are several gates that come off of the G center, and one of them is living in the past. And it is a story that we tell ourselves and how we can change that story. And
Yeah.
it makes us very good storytellers. It's Gate 56. So it's interesting though to see that you could be living in the past. You could be really good at, explaining things and connecting and telling the story. But if you don't get out of the cycle,
Yeah.
and let go of what's not serving you, it'll be amazing. And tell yourself a different story.
Mhm.
It'll be amazing. It should be a really big shift. So yeah, that is amazing to me.
It is cool. And I'm so grateful to you for listening to all the craziness. And you were the one that was like, oh my gosh. And then this happened. And I text and go, and then there was an owl. And then there was this. And then there was that. And just like,
yeah. And I'm like, woo, this is so exciting.
you were just like along for the ride. You're like, let me know what happens. I was like, you're walking Netflix binge,
right?
Like,
yeah. I'm like, yeah. So yeah, I'll be there in 30. I want to see this happen. Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh yeah. Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime. Yeah. I like the woo-woo. I'm very open-minded. I don't have head or anja defined. I'm very open-minded. So yeah, I can see it from all sides.
Yes, it was definitely fun. It was fun, scary for a time, but fun to look back and just know if we allow it, we're totally taken care of.
Oh yeah.
And we just have to make sure that our receptors are working. I have a reception issue that I'm working on.
Yeah.
Because hence the, one bird wouldn't do it. He sent me 20?
Several. Yeah. I was going to say that was like a herd of birds, literally.
Including a big one that landed in my window going, hello.
Hello. Yeah. Can you see me? Yeah. Like that Garfield cat. Well, and what's interesting is that it just came into me that when the dove hit, doves are peace. So, I mean, it was like peace hit the fan and died in your hands.
and then change.
And then change came. Yes. So, I mean, the omens of the whippoorwill and then the owls, owls are wisdom, and the full moon, which is everything coming to a point.
Yeah.
And then,
and literally on top of a pole, one of them on top of a pole.
Yeah. I mean,
the one that sounded like a cry, literally sounded like a cry. So I actually walked over because the cry was so deliberate. Yeah. So I mean, everything about it, it's almost poetic. I wish I could have told it in a more poetic way, but there were so many things that even though I wrote them down, and I'm glad that if this happens to anybody that's watching this, write it down.
Journal it all.
Write it all. Yeah. Even if it's just like, the way I told it here, I literally am looking at how I wrote it down and I was writing arrows going, oh, wait. And then this,
Oh yeah.
Insert this here. Yeah.
Yes. Insert this here.
Insert this here. Because it happened before that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when you do journal it and keep it, you can go back and look at it and go, and I'm still seeing more to it. There's still being more revealed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it's layered. Because we're layered, right? We've got multiple layers. And so it doesn't surprise me that emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, things will start to coming back up to where you're like, oh yeah, totally missed that one.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I saw that, wrote that off. So we
got to tune in our receptors so that we can, and I've done several blogs and videos and things on the question, are you available to receive?
Mm-hmm.
And because you can ask for things, are you available to receive? Mm-hmm. I mean, I work with some women that don't even receive a compliment.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
If you don't receive a compliment, you got to start there. Self-love.
Yeah. Self-love is, that's G-Center though. I mean, it's all about self-love. Having that 10 defined. I mean, even that is like that night and day kind of, I love myself versus I go to dark place every time. So, I mean, there's a lot there. Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm. There's a lot in that G to work through. A lot of channels. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I know. I just think it's just amazing. I'm like, ooh, so what else did you do? What else did you see? I'm a little too excited about this. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh.
It's crazy. I'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. That's a very vulnerable thing to share, such a personal happening process.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you so much, because that's, wow. I so appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was amazing to watch it.
Very grateful you know, that not only did I have the signs, but I had people from channels in my life that made me say, yeah, you should follow those.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so as we get better, I think at recognizing the signs that my receptors get more tuned in,
Mm-hmm.
I may not have to be, you know, calling my vodka drinking friends first.
Your call tree changes a little bit.
It might change. It might change a little. I call Christy first. Yeah.
I'll be like, okay, Alan's not there. I'm on my way.
Let's go see what's happening.
Let's go see what's happening. I'm so excited. Oh my goodness. Yes.
It's always something.
Oh, it's always something. It's always something. Well, I mean, and that's just it. I mean, so many times we're waiting, you know, even generators, manifesting generators were waiting, you know, projectors were waiting. And it's like, we're waiting for those signs. We're asking for things, but we're waiting for them to show up. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you can't have this until you get rid of this, because this is this is in the way. You got to clear the pipes almost. Right.
Yeah.
And I just think it's amazing how that happened so clearly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this was very in your face. You cannot ignore this.
And you talk about making the decisions, and then the instant that I got the words out, and there was not even any rebuttal. It'll be an hour, and this will all be done.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Spirit's like, woohoo!
Yeah.
She got it. She got it. She got it.
Yeah.
You know, your spiritual team is like, woohoo!
I know. I read about our angels this morning in one of my devotional books, and I'm just laughing, thinking mine are probably like, oh, thank goodness we were exhausted.
Yes. Yes. I know mine laugh at me all the time. They're like, oh, she did it again. Did it again. You know?
I'm wearing mine out.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Mine are ready to retire, I'm sure. So yeah, just, you know, we just can't.
Yep.
But thank you so much. And I do think that we are going to have other videos.
Yes.
We might have some on-site videos with the horses.
Yes.
That would be very fun.
It would be fun.
So yeah. So
we'll get the real version of what's behind me.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. We need some videos of the horses.
We'll get that.
Yes, we should do that. That'd be very fun. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.